What's going on, everyone? This is kind of the behind the scenes of my three-wheeler replica build. As you can see, I'm just a guy with a two-car garage working on a project. So no fancy machine shop, no hydraulic presses, CNC machines, nothing like that. Literally doing this thing probably not too different from how they did in the 30s. But even in the 30s, they probably had a better workspace and tools than I have. So I'm just kind of showing you the general chaos. But fortunately, because this thing is so small, you don't need a ton of room. That's, pretty advantageous of this. It's takes up similar footprint to a motorcycle, like a cruiser. I have one over there covered up so I don't mess it up welding and grinding and all that, but it's not too much bigger. Obviously wider, but you get what I'm saying. In the past, I've had Mustangs and a Jeep and some other cars I've worked on that were fun projects, but they took up a lot more room. I was looking for something small, looking for something different, unique, fun, and that led me to this. Excuse me. So after my coughing fit, I'm back. Yeah, basically the whole point of this video, I might start, well, basically I have a second frame right here. If the design looks similar, it's because it's the same as this. I did not make these, I purchased them from a fabricator. He did the building. This one is actually longer than this one, and I'm pretty tall, so I need that extra length. So my plan is build this one, sell this one, and then finance and build the second one. And keep the second one, as I'd really like to do that. All that being said, literally I'm just walking you through, kind of showing you that I've had a lot of people say, man, I'd love to do something like this. I would, I say do it. I've done a lot, but nothing like this. This, I knew I would have to paint it or fiberglass it or do something. And I thought, you know what, let's try to just hand roll aluminum. How hard could it be? So as you can see in the background, I had two 4x8 sheets of aluminum. It was about 250 bucks. I had to go get it home. And then I had the makings of all this. And to be honest, it's pretty nerve-wracking because that's an expensive piece of material and you don't want to mess up a cut, but take your time, measure things out. Long piece here, you can see where it's clecoed, goes around there. And then my tail piece, you can see I've actually got kind of sitting back here. It does wrap around nice and clean around the tail. And all I'm doing is just cutting and folding over the edge, cutting and folding over the edge. I'll use brazing rods to fill in these gaps. I think I have an example. I've done that a few places. Not finished, but I've done that a little bit here. Most of this will be covered by an armrest, but the aluminum, when it's all said and done, polished up, it should match pretty good, fill in the gaps. It's kind of your filler. Every project you need to have a way to fill in gaps or mistakes. You drill a hole the wrong place, whatever. You can't just throw out the piece. You gotta have a way to fill it in. Anyway, the plan for this, the reason I shaped it, took it off, is I'm going to be cutting louvers into there. And to do that, this was something, my shop's kind of a mess, but it's just kind of the way it is. I just made a louver press, if that makes sense. It's hard to see the dimension, but I just cut out of a piece of wood using this. This allowed me to, I forget what these are called, but it gets in there nice. And then I just started banging away. As you can see, kind of a mess. This was my first one. I was like, oh, that's not bad. And then my second one, and I don't know, there's more. But this was kind of my practice run. Before I cut into that, I thought, I need to get them as close as I can. And really, you're just shaping them. As long as you try to keep things pretty uniform. It's like if they made these in the 30s, Now, granted, I'd love to have a louver press. I'd love to find somebody that could do that for me, but I thought, how hard can it be? And this is not, 100%, but it's in the right direction. I still have some trial and error, but you see where I'm going for. I mean, this is it. Everything is just me, hand tools. I have a compressor, I have a welder, and then it's just a bunch of Harbor Freight grinders, polishers, cordless drill, you name it. Yeah, that being said, similar with the interior, I've never used a sewing machine prior to this project. I talked to my wife, she showed me how. I talked to the fabric people, said I'm outdoor project, doing vinyl, what do you suggest, blah, blah, blah. And just started making these pieces. Everything is in disarray because as you work on something like this, you have to take it apart constantly. You get the interior done, you're like, wow, it looks good, but now I need to take it all out because when I cut and weld and grind, and I don't want to mess up what I just spent a lot of time making. Stuff like that. So you'll get something done and then you'll take it off. You'll get it done, take it off. Let's see if I can remove this one-handed. Okay. Like I said, I want to go for the rivets and aluminum look. And so I just made these pieces, just kind of measured and cut and measured and cut and measured, welded them up out of just stick steel, stuff you get at Home Depot or Lowe's. And looked at a lot of dimensions, looked at a lot of different things. There's many different designs between the Morgans, between the JZRs, the Tri-King. There's a lot of designs you can go with. All that being said, I kind of picked what I liked, and that's what I'm shooting for. As you can see, the motor, this thing does run as I got it. None of this has been tackled. All this needs to be cleaned up, sorted. This looks like garbage right now, but I'm focusing on all that, and I'll come back and square this away. That's the other thing about a project like this. As you can see, the steering rack's on the ground. There's always a million, do I focus on this or focus on that? Do I focus on this little itty bitty or the big picture? And I find it's better to focus on the big picture. Like the aluminum really intimidated me. I was nervous to do it, but I thought I just need to dive in. If you mess it up, you mess it up, but just get into it. And as soon as I started doing the big stuff, then all the little things bugged me less, if that makes sense. Like I started by just doing a little polishing, a little rattle can paint, the header paint, doing the brakes, little stuff like that. I made a bumper for up here. Again, it's in one of my piles because I got to take it off to work on it. And then I realized, the steering rack wasn't right. I need to adjust the brakes, things like that. I have my tailpipes up there. I made a heat shield for one side. I mean, all of it put together looks awesome, but I constantly have to take it apart because while I'm working on the body, sanding, riveting, polishing, stretching, etc., that would get in the way. The pipe would get in the way. I'm going to paint those pipes black, just like I painted these pipes black. But now it's December, it's cold. I'm going to have to find a warm spot to paint, and my wife doesn't like when I do it in the basement, so it stinks up the house. So I'm going to have to wait till she's gone or something. But anyway, all that stuff being said, I'd say jump into something like this. I like the aesthetic of the rivets and the metal. It's simple, it's clean. This obviously isn't done yet. I need to cut there. I'm going to need to trim there to get this line correct. It's not at the moment. I may end up TIGging it, but most likely I'm going to add another piece down there and then rivet to that. And I've never used these are all pop rivets. These will come out and I'll be using aircraft rivets in the very near future. I've never even used these Clecos prior to this. I've never done anything like this, but honestly, it's not hard. It really isn't. You have Cleco pliers. I just got some new ones in the mail. These are nice and shiny, never used yet. You got something like this hole punch where you kind of spring loaded, gives you a nice little punch so your drill doesn't wander as you're drilling. And really, you just do a lot of measuring and use the same thing. Like they sell rivet spacing tools that looks like a fan. I just got a hold of one of these. It's got a little bend to it. You can see that, which is nice to like follow your curves. And I just Sharpied it up. And then I use this for all my riveting for the spacing so it's correct. So if it's correct there, it's correct back there, and it's correct on the other side. It's just a lot of stuff like that. It's just systematically thinking about how to do this and how to be able to replicate it as much as you can. And again, like for instance, this is all 1.25 inch spacing. I was planning on a much tighter spacing until I talked to a guy who does aircraft restoration, and he said, no, what you want is 1.25. That is what we use in aircraft. That will look the most correct. Too close, it'll look funny. Too far, it'll look funny. He also recommended these 1/8 inch rivets. Originally, I had 3/16 rivets, which it doesn't seem that different, but when you're trying to do things, you want to do things the best way. And if it's choice of A versus B, it's not any different in the work. It's just difference in, you know, having the correct look. For an example, I use the 3/16 back here. Not much difference, but it does add up. A little bit bigger, the smaller. Again, with, you know, YouTube videos not doing it justice, but you get the idea. It's just, whenever you're doing something like this, research it, talk to people, because little things like that make a difference. And again, it's not any cost difference, or doesn't take you more time or less time. It's just kind of getting the right look. Here's that brazing rod filler I was kind of talking about. Again, none of this is sanded. None of this is the final prep. You see the hammer marks. It's all dusty, stuff like that. But this side has a little gap. This side's filled in. Once you sand it down, it allows the aluminum to be less intimidating because you know you have a means of filling it in. You can see here where I have the metal trim still kind of hanging down. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. That's intentional. I'm going to be building kind of a firewall in that area, and I'm still not 100%. I have a couple different means of how I plan to cover all that, and I may incorporate those, I may not. So just for the moment, I haven't rolled them over, I haven't trimmed them. They're just hanging out there. This is something I get to work on maybe a couple hours a day, about 4 times a week, 5 times a week. And so it's slowly but surely happening. And when you have those kind of timetables, you have to prioritize, because it's very easy to just come out and start piddling away and, you know, oh, I need to clean up, I need to straighten up, I need to sweep. And before you know it, 2 hours gone and you haven't really done much. And that's frustrating. You do that a few days in a row, you just feel like I'm not doing anything. So you need to come out with a big idea. And often I try to leave things as clean as I can, so when I come back, it's like, okay, boom, today, louvers. And everything's ready to go. I don't have to like do a lot of prep. The other thing, like I said, with this, you know, I have my floorboards, I have my seats, I have my center console, I have my dash. The dash gives you a lot of room for creativity. Something else that I got done, it's one of my first pieces I got done, but now it has to sit face down so I don't mess it up in the process. This is my Stewie-headed display, as everyone likes to call it. Here's a hole for where the steering wheel will go in. But overall, pretty happy. It's simple. It's a small dash. You don't have a lot of real estate in something this size. So everything's very intentional. These will be your headlight switches, the seat heater switches. Most likely, I'll probably add a charger, because a lot of people say, you know, a heated blanket would be nice. And something like this where there's no heat, there's no top, there's no doors. I do have seat heaters that I built in, so that's something. But, you know, this was fun because, again, I'm trying to go with an aircraft theme, the brushed metal, simple, clean. That's what I like to do. So, yeah, I'm just rambling at this point, so I'll wrap it up. This all looks like a hot mess, and it is to an extent, but with limited space, this is kind of what you're in for. But that should not discourage you from trying to do something like this. As you see, this side's not even riveted. This is all something trial and error, but it's pretty cheap. I've got probably about $3,000 in materials and tools and, you name it, buying mirrors, buying a steering wheel, buying gauges. Those can add up quick. Wood and vinyl and padding material and some exhaust paint and getting these bent by a muffler shop and lots and lots and lots of metal. I'll talk about that before I get out of here. Again, if I had more space, this wouldn't be so front and center, but I don't. Just lots of this metal. This is a little tiny piece. This is all 1/8 inch. This is just standard, what you get at the hardware store. But this is how I built, the hood. This is how I built the firewall area, your hood. My trunk area I had done, but I'm not happy with it. It's kind of right here. I need to redesign it. But literally just cutting, measuring, bending it all by hand. You bend it on a tire. You bend it on the argon bottle. You bend it wherever you can bend it. You can wrap it around here a little bit. This is rectangular tube, so it has some rigidity to it. But like I said, you don't need anything really technical, or you don't need like pipe benders or rollers or anything if you're using 1/8 inch metal and 16 gauge aluminum. This you can all pretty much bend by hand. As you see, I have a bunch of scraps. I'd bend it by hand, but I couldn't hold the camera. You know what I'm saying? All that being said, this is a blast. I'm really enjoying it. I'm having a lot of people ask me for details, ask me for dimensions. I will get the dimensions because this is something that a lot of people could build. This Moto Guzzi engine. It's the engine of choice. Again, it's filthy. I hate showing it like this, but because it's transverse, I'd show you my bike over there. It's a traditional V-twin where the V-twin sits in line with the tank and the driver. These, they're transverse. Like your knees would be right here. You're going that way down the road. Transmission goes straight back. You have a drive shaft that comes down. Again, sorry for the poor quality. Drive shaft, rear wheel, drive shaft. Yes, this rear tire is super skinny, but apparently that's not too big of a thing with these Morgans. They have these super rubber band thin looking tires, but this is actually a safety tire meant for a three-wheeler or a sidecar. So it can handle the side-to-side stresses better than a conventional tire. So that's important. But anyway, all that being said, these Moto Guzzi motors, because that V-twin sits out front, nice and prominent, that's what you're going for. I was considering different Kawasaki motors and different things like that because they're bigger, and I thought, I can get a 1600cc, I can get a 2000cc engine, and this thing would really haul. But I'm like, then I realized, oh, the geometry would be all screwed up. The drive shaft would be like down the side. I'm like, that's why they use these Moto Guzzis. And so again, when I plan to build the second one, I'll use a newer fuel injected Moto Guzzi engine. I'll probably use a Kawasaki rear end, quite truthfully. I've got a mean streak under there, and that rear end's pretty robust. You can get a 200 plus tire on the rear, just my thinking. Last thing, and then I'll actually turn it off. I made this little vision board, if this makes sense. A lot of my own kind of drawings, dimensions, different things. This is kind of me processing, but then also having the true pictures. Like I really wanted to achieve that type of line. I'm still figuring out how to make a nose cone. The heat shield I've replicated pretty good. Interior, all that kind of stuff. This is important because rather than scroll through your phone for the millionth time, it's helpful to have stuff like that. Because it's like, how is this line? How does this line up? Things like that. So goodness, this is like 20 minutes of me rambling, but a lot of you have asked for kind of the behind the scenes look on all this, and here it is. So 2-car garage, just a dude, no fancy tools or equipment at all. This could be you. So get out there, get your hands dirty, make something. It's so much cooler than buying something. That's it. Thank you.